Hello and welcome to the T Micro video for equilibrium, presented by myself, Aritro, as well as with the help of Keeva, who made the graphs for this video. So what exactly is equilibrium? Equilibrium is when the price of the good being sold makes it so the demand is perfectly met, leaving no excess demand nor any excess supply in the market. We'll get into what excess demand and excess supply are later in the video, and we'll demonstrate how it looks on a graph. You can very easily see the equilibrium point on a graph, and it makes it much more easier to visualize and understand. It is where the supply and the demand curve meet each other and overlap. As you can see here on this graph, the supply is in red and the demand in blue. The point where they meet is called the equilibrium point. And at this place, there is neither any excess demand nor any excess supply. In fact, the demand is perfectly met by the supply. So what happens when the market is not in equilibrium? If the market is not in equilibrium, there is either an excess in demand or an excess in supply. This means that there is either too much demand for the quantity supplied, or there is too much supply for the quantity demanded. If the market is not interfered with, the good will always tend to return to equilibrium. This is because the consumers and suppliers will adjust the price and demand respectively of the good naturally, so that everything is balanced again. Here's a quick overview of what excess demand and excess supply look like on a graph. Here we are going to take a closer look at excess supply. Excess supply is when there is too much of the product supplied compared to the quantity demanded. Although, when a market does have an excess supply, the suppliers will notice that they are supplying too much of the product for the quantity demanded, and they will most likely reduce the price of the product as a result. Once the product reduces in price, it is also likely that there will be more consumers interested in the product, meaning that demand will increase. This is how the good tends to equilibrium when there is an excess in supply. As we see on this graph here, the quantity supplied is here, and the quantity demanded is here. And the quantity supplied is clearly much larger than the quantity demanded, meaning that this market is not in equilibrium and has an excess demand. Now we are going to take a quick look at excess demand in the market. Excess demand is when there is too much demand for a good compared to the quantity supplied. What usually happens in this situation is quite the opposite of what happens when there is an excess supply in the market. The supplier will most likely up the price of the good as to try and increase profits, and the consumer will respond to that, and the demand will go down, as less people are likely to try and buy a more expensive product. This will happen until the supply and demand curve meet and the good is in equilibrium once again. As we can see on this graph, this is the quantity supplied and this is the quantity demanded. We clearly see that the quantity supplied is much less than the quantity demanded, meaning that there is an excess demand in this market. That is the end of my presentation, so I thank you very much for watching.